to wrap up the videos on how to attach a plastic parachute. We saw that one thing I like doing is to use slip knots. The slip knot goes through the square and you can slide it down. And I added a little touch of CA glue over the knot and the square. I'll let this dry overnight and it's nice and solid. Likewise, I use a slip knot here to pull the Kevlar cord down so that we can very easily get these nice and straight. If you end up in a situation where one line is longer than the other, you can always adjust the slip knot. And that's what's really important about this, that if your squares are not exactly in the right place, or the center hole is off by a little bit, or if the cord is not cut exactly right, you can always compensate for it by very easily using slip knots before you glue everything down. I put a drop of glue here, and I have my drop of glue on the end here. But what I want to show you in this video is the fact that there's still a way where this could fail, and I want to make sure that we accommodate for this situation. If you look at this knot, you'll see I trimmed very, very, very closely off the little pigtail that was on it. And it did the same thing in this knot right here. See, there's no pigtail. I trimmed it right off at the knot. Very, very small. And the reason is this pigtail was initially about 1/4 of an inch long. It may not seem that long. It seems insignificant. However, I was doing some experiments where I was folding the parachute, wrapping up the shroud lines, and then trying to open it. What happened is that little tiny piece got caught on the shroud lines like this, and it caused it to not open. And out of around a dozen tries, I think that happened to me twice. So this is a so-called failure mode. So basically, if we know it can fail, it means we have to engineer it so that it does not fail. So again, trim off the little pigtail here till it's very, very small or non-existent. Get as close to the knot as you can. The knot will not come out simply because it's been treated with the CA glue. And the same thing with this knot back here. It's got the CA glue treatment, so it's not going to come out. Pull on this as hard as you want. It's not going to come apart. So yeah, that's nice and solid. The reason I like using CA glue on Kevlar, particularly in the knots, is that it'll wick into the knot. So you can tie the knot very, very tight. A drop of Kevlar on the outside will actually soak in really quickly. Then you just wipe off some of the excess and you're done. Other glues will not soak into the actual Kevlar itself. They'll just lay on top. Then you got to squeeze the knot, which basically undoes the knot. And it really is not a very practical solution. In general, wood glues, which are water-based, will not soak into something that's a synthetic material similar to this Kevlar. Now, I'd like to also say I did the same thing here. These lines, once I put the square on, I put the shroud line through, I tied it. But again, I had a slip knot, which I had initially tied down here. I slid this all the way down to this. And now I just very simply trim this off so it's nice and short, almost non-existent. And this is not going to come apart. There's some CA glue in the knot, CA glue on the little piece of paper. Everything's glued together extremely tight. You don't have to worry about this tearing or zippering because the glue now absorbs all of the stress that's on this. So again, trim the cord at this point to be very, very short. You don't want that getting tangled. And if a cord slides alongside of this, if this sticks out even by 1/8 of an inch, it's just going to get caught and start tangling. Also, trim this, or we want to have this knot. So just a teeny little part in there. It's okay. It's not going to cause any problems. It's very, very small. But initially, this was sticking out about maybe 1/4 of an inch. And this knot here. So CA glue, the Kevlar, everything works perfectly, but we have to keep engineering this to make sure we don't have any failures. And this will make the parachute much more reliable. There's nothing worse than having your parachute pop out and it doesn't open. And you find out it's because it got hung up on something. Notice that's why we do not use the elastic bands and the anchors inside of the tubes. This particular kit did not have the anchor, a Kevlar or a cord anchor inside the tube. Instead, it was anchored back on the engine, which is very, very good. But still, if you don't have these things trimmed, they can very easily get caught up. Also notice that this loop is going to be attached to our Kevlar blanket eventually. And we got a nice distance here. This piece of Kevlar was initially 2 feet long. And it keeps the parachute away from the rocket body. And that's what you want to have, because if this is too close to the nose cone is going to jump up and down, and that's going to thread itself through your lines. and you're going to get your parachute back, and the nose cone is going to have weaved itself into these lines so tightly that it's going to be a mess to undo, and you may have to just cut your parachute off. However, if you have this loop with a 2-foot line, initially it's 2 feet, we lose about 3 inches here. But this is far enough away that the nose cone, if it jumps up and down, it's not going to interfere with the parachute. So this again is the beauty of using a large Kevlar line and having that far away from your parachute. Okay, so that does it. The next step after this is to prepare the spotting streamer.